Oh boy, another week, another episode, a beautiful time to be here. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome back to the Gobcast, episode 82. We're here once again taking calls on this wonderful, wonderful Wednesday, a different day than we normally take calls. We were meant to take them yesterday on Tuesday. However, LA received one of its only tornado warnings in history, and my internet was down all day. So here we are on Wednesday, taking phone calls once again, and we have an absolutely insane lineup of calls today. But before we go any further into what calls we have and what the topic is for today, yada, 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 I kind of got to vent a little bit, guys, and I'm just going to be up front because normally this is the part of the episode where I would tell you guys how to find the call-in instructions in the topic of the day. Typically, I would say, well, just go follow us on our Gobcast official Instagram or follow me on Twitter, yada, yada. However, just the other day, 2 days ago now, the official Gobcast Instagram was permanently suspended on Instagram. I submitted an appeal, but as somebody who's been banned on Instagram more times than I can count on my fingers, I'll tell you right now, that appeal is going straight into the trash bin at Instagram headquarters. It means absolutely nothing. I don't even know why our official Instagram page was banned. They don't give you a reason when they suspend you on Instagram. All that happens is when you open the app, a little screen that pops up and it says, hey, you're banned, retard. Put your email in and we'll maybe contact you if we care enough to do so. Otherwise, make a new account. So we have a new temporary Instagram while we work on getting unbanned, which we will get unbanned in the near future. I know that with near certainty, but just in case we don't, make sure you follow the Gobcast on Instagram, but this time there's a dot between the and Gobcast. I'll put the link in the comments below so you guys don't have to go search it up. It's very frustrating to have to do this. I feel like countless times now I've had to come on, whether it's my podcast or my YouTube channel or post on Twitter, and talk about how Instagram has banned me unjustly. And I say the ban is unjust because somehow, despite getting banned over and over and over, I still manage to get unbanned every time, which tells me that it's unjust. It's a temporary setback, but the real reason I'm stressing this to you guys is because the Gobcast Instagram is primarily how we post our phone number. It is the main way that I always tell you guys to, how to find the topic and how to determine what days we're calling in. So things have changed a little bit. From now until whenever we get unbanned on Instagram, if you want to call into the show and you want to find out what days we're taking calls, you just got to follow my personal Instagram or my Twitter account instead. We'll have links for those in the pinned comment below. All you got to do is scroll down and find them. But for the time being, there pretty much is no official Gobcast account. I mean, I just gave you an @ for one, but we have no posts on it because all our posts just got sent to the void. We had a bunch of really fun stuff and it's all gone. Even worse than that is we had two very exciting guests that I was speaking to from the Gobcast official Instagram account that I now have lost contact with because that account got banned, which is super frustrating. And I know a lot of you guys are going to think, well, Goblin, just DM them from your main account. It has more followers. And unfortunately, getting someone who has a lot of followers to check and read their DMs is a total luck of the draw scenario. And we got really lucky by getting these two guests that I'm not going to name yet to check our messages to them. And it's not likely they're going to do that again. I've already hit them up again from the main. No response yet. We'll see how it goes. But with that being said, just be aware that Instagram is not a very big fan of myself or my channels or any of my profiles or any of my shows. So if we get banned one day, if you suddenly log in and you can't find my profile on Instagram, just know that I didn't block you. Instagram just doesn't like me. It's a tough life to live over here. But fuck you, Instagram. Go to hell, all right? I don't care. Today, we're here on YouTube, a much better platform, and we're taking some wonderful calls. And today, I gave you all a absolutely stellar topic. I wanted to hear about your crash outs. The biggest crash outs in my community, I begged them to call in today. And I'm going to tell you right now, as someone who listened to many voicemails this morning, They definitely listened up. They called in. We had calls from all sorts of crash out individuals. We had some relationship issues, which I feel like we've heard enough of those. More importantly, we had one guy who got put in special ed classes in middle school, then crashed out so hard that he put his school into a full-on lockdown. We have another dude who called in because he got out of jail yesterday after committing a DUI hit and run. We actually have multiple intoxicated drivers who have called in today. We also have people who have gotten kicked out of parties for their crash outs, and I don't think I want to spoil much more than that because that makes it not very fun. You know, once we start spoiling stuff, what's the point in watching anymore? But before we actually start taking calls today, I want to talk about one of my crash outs. You know, this is something new that I've kind of started doing. I would like to answer these prompts myself. So when I post on Twitter or Instagram on a caller episode and I tell you guys to call in and tell me about crashing out, from now on, I'm also going to share my stories on the topic. And immediately, when I think of myself crashing out, there's one particular instance that comes to my mind. Years ago, I want to say it was like 4-ish years ago. This is back in 2021. I lived in a much smaller town called Springfield, Illinois. And I had two neighbors next to my house who, I'm trying to figure out how to word this in a polite way, were not desirable neighbors. And those neighbors, one of them was just an old guy who just hated anything. And the person next to him was an employee of the city, specifically an employee of the department that issued the fines and complaints for housing violations. So me being a complete cokehead, bar-tard idiot, I lived in this house that I rented, and I would never mow my lawn. I would never, even my mail, dude, my mailbox was full. It was just piling up on the curb. Who gives a fuck about the mail? I don't care about the mail, right? My grass at one point got so tall that it literally was taller than my fence. It was all the way over my fence. And mind you, my fence was taller than me. So, this wasn't like, oh, dude, it's some waist-high grass. No, dude, you walk into my backyard and Tarzan could be swinging in there. It was fucked up. But I had some neighbors who weren't really fond of me and weren't fond of my lifestyle. And every time they saw something they didn't like, they would report it to the city, and I would get a letter in the mail with a fine. It was a bill that would tell me, hey, you better pay $125 for this violation or else we'll take you to court. And they did this for months on end. And they would file complaints for everything. One time I had my car parked in a way they didn't like. I had a couple friends over, and I'd moved my car slightly onto my lawn. I got a fine in the mail for that. My grass being too long, I probably got a fine every single week, but good luck, bro. I'm not going to cut that shit. I vividly remember getting other fines that were much, much worse for stupider shit. One time I had a couch that I had gotten a new couch, and my old one that was like a hand-me-down from the previous tenant of the crib, I had moved out to my driveway, right? And I left it at the end of the driveway because that's where you put garbage, right? The garbage company is going to come around. Well, according to the city, if you leave any sort of furniture out visible on your property, outdoors at all, even if it's on the curb where they collect garbage, you're in trouble. I got a fine in the mail for that. And I was not paying these fines, but my landlord was hitting me up and just consistently getting pissed about it, being like, hey, I got another letter in the mail. Because mind you, they're sending these fines both to the address, where I'm living, and to the registered owner's address, my landlord. So I'm getting all these messages from my landlord hey, you got another fine. I'm going to add it onto your rent, yada, yada, yada. So I ended up paying it anyways. And one night, I did a bunch of fucking ketamine, a disgusting amount of K. Truly, I couldn't feel any of my limbs anymore. And I don't know what it was. I think I'd gotten a letter that day, if I remember correctly, or recently, leading up to this K-hole. I'd gotten another fine, and it was just the final straw. I'd fucking had enough. Because mind you, these neighbors had never come over and spoke to me about it. I didn't even know what these people looked like, right? They legitimately were just everything they had wrong with my property. They would just file a complaint to the city. So finally, I was like, yo, I'm on enough ketamine to not care anymore. It was 2 a.m. I was pissed. I went down to my kitchen. I literally, I can close my eyes and picture this occurring. I went down to my kitchen, and on top of the cabinet, my leftmost cabinet, to the left of my dishwasher, right by the garage door, is this stack of letters. Probably 50% of them were complaints from the city telling me, hey, pay up, you dumb fuck. And I got sick of it. I said, I've had enough. I'm going to write a letter back to the neighbor. So I literally pulled out a piece of notebook paper and I just scribbled some ketamine ass writings on it. And I don't remember word for word what I wrote, but it was along the lines of like, yo, fuck you, neighbor. Mind your business, you fucking cocksucker. Like it was horrible. And it was a very unneighborly thing to write. And at 2 a.m, I walk outside, Kate out of my mind in nothing but my underwear, holding this letter with a piece of scotch tape on it. And I walk over to my neighbor's house and I slap it on his door facing inwards. And my neighbor, I knew he was the one calling. It was him and the person next to him. I only had 1 letter. I didn't have enough energy in me for 2 letters. So he was the neighbor that got it. Slapped that shit on his door. I walked back over. I even rang his doorbell when I did it, bro. I was down, dude. I remember. I don't remember if I rang or not, but I remember like I definitely did just stick it on the door and leave. Like I wanted someone to answer that door. I was ready to fight, dude. If Gramps answered that door in that moment, I probably would have swung. Should I have swung? Probably not. I was a shitty neighbor, but Ketamine me thought I was a great neighbor. So I go back home. And I remember the following day, it was like 6 or 7 p.m. It was after work time. I honestly barely even remembered leaving this note. But my neighbor and the other neighbor, so these 2 households came together and pulled up on me and rang my fucking doorbell. And I remember answering the door. I'm like, yo, what's up? I don't remember this part very well because, mind you, I was on ketamine this day too. But it went something along the lines of like, yo, what's your problem, dude? Fucking come outside if you got a problem. You know, I'm like, bet. You picked the wrong one. I'll come outside right now. I'm not a fighter or anything, but you give me some ketamine and like file complaints on my house for 6 months straight. And like, dude, I'll swing. I'll make it happen. So I step back outside and the neighbor, the old guy whose house that I left the note on is out there with the other neighbor on the other side who worked for the city, and his whole family's out there. He brought his daughter out. The girl's like 7 years old. The whole family's outside. Literally, the guy's like getting in my face. His daughter's standing right there. He's sitting there, and we're just rage baiting each other. He's like, swing on me. I'm like, no, you swing on me, bro. We're like going back and forth. I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I remember we both had like come to an agreement that we shouldn't fight right now because his daughter was there. It's like, yo, send your daughter back inside. And he's like, no, I'm not going to make her go inside. But if she wasn't here, I'd fuck you up. And I'm like, well, you should send her back inside so I can fuck you up. And he's like, no, this is America. My daughter has free will. And I'm like, all right, dude, but like, I'm not going to, I'm just not going to fight you in front of your daughter. You got to send her inside. He's like, yeah, and I'm not going to fight you in front of my daughter. But if she wasn't here, I'd fuck you up. It was one of those things, like it was one of those confrontations where like no one there really wanted confrontation, but like, we can't say that. We got to do a little bit of role play, so we're beefing with each other. That was probably my most notable crash out. After that day, never in my fucking life did I interact with those neighbors again. I kept getting letters in the mail, but it was like, all right, dude, do I want to have another showdown on my lawn? And like, I lived right off a main road. So there was, honest to God, probably people filming it from their cars. There's probably a video of this incident out there somewhere. I'm not begging for it. I don't want to see that, I was Kate the fuck up. Don't show me that shit. But that's my crash out story for the day. That's my crash out incident. But I don't want to hear from me, and you guys are probably sick of hearing from me after all these years. So let's hear from some crash out callers, shall we?